Hey everybody, it's our chapter 12 overview. As you can see, still got the big fuzzy sweater on. It isn't warming up outside, I'll tell you that. Chapter 12, problem employees or counseling and discipline. And we've talked a little bit about this in the other chapter. This just gets into it a little more deeply. Problems requiring special action, that kind of thing. It kind of gets into then, how do we recognize problems? How do we kind of deal with some of these problems? This is a very brief overview of this chapter. But there are some really good key things in here I want you to remember. If you look on page 324, back to our supervision book, chapter 12, page 324, there's 6 key questions to keep in mind. I want you to always go back to those 6 questions. If you have to, put them on a little note card, keep them in your pocket. Put them in your desk. I don't care where you put them. But remember to ask yourself these 6 questions when there's something going on that's questionable with an employee. So has the employee performed better in the past? If they have, and this is a change, you need to find out why. Is there something going on at home that's affecting their ability to get to work on time? Some people don't tell you their personal stuff. I mean, yeah, some people tell you everything, but there are those that, it's private. And you don't want to pry, but you do have to find out if there's something going on that you can, that maybe you can help with. Maybe it's just a matter of changing shifts or something. Has the employee received proper training? Are they making mistakes? Are there customer complaints or whatever it is? Revisit the training or think about that. Don't assume because they've had the training that they're going to do it 100% all the time. How good is your training? You're making the assumption your training's fabulous. Well, you got good trainers? Can they reach people that learn differently? Does the employee know and understand the objectives he or she is to accomplish? Were you clear? Do you set clear goals and objectives? Do you have an action plan? Do any of you right now that I'm talking to have an action plan? There, you can sit down with an employee and say, okay, here's our action plan. These are our goals and our objectives. And go from there. A lot of people don't. Is the supervisor providing enough feedback and support? Has the supervisor encouraged and rewarded high performance? Or do you just not say anything? All right. Extinction. Some people think if they don't say anything, nothing bad will happen. It's called extinction. It doesn't make the behavior extinct. It just makes feedback extinct. It doesn't work. And are other employees with similar abilities performing well? Or, are they experiencing the same difficulties? Often it's a problem with the process, not necessarily the employee. And then get into absenteeism, tardiness, insubordination, uncooperativeness. The numbers are staggering. I think in this they were talking about $645 per person is the cost of absenteeism in 2003. That's just, oh my God, that's a lot of money. If you look at the little diagram on the bottom of page 325, 36% had unscheduled absences due to personal illness. And you can look at how that is broke down. Insubordination, uncooperativeness. Geez, they have a whole list here of things. Oh my goodness. Generally poor attitude, criticizing, complaining, showing a dislike for the supervisor or dislike for the organization. They make an art form out of doing as little as possible. Well, I've met people like that. The busybodies, the busy bees. They always look so busy, but they don't really do anything. People who socialize all the time. People are always joking around, moving slowly, forgetting to wear, PPE equipment, signing out for lunch, not coming back on time, blaming the supervisor for everything, all this good stuff. So there's all kinds of things that you're going to end up dealing with and worrying about. Then it gets into kind of the hardcore stuff, we have some real legal issues to worry about here, like, for example, alcohol and drug abuse. You have to understand the ADA and the laws underneath the ADA to deal with this effectively. Again, the documentation comes into play. And the other part of this is do not make assumptions about anything, ever. I'll give you an example. When we talk about alcohol and drug abuse, if you think somebody's drunk, for example, you can smell alcohol in their breath, they're acting kind of woozy or whatever. And you say, you're drunk, out of here, right? Well, be very, very careful because they may have a disease or something that simulates those same characteristics. So, for example, my mom, type 2 diabetic. And when she was with us kids we knew when mom's sugar was off because all of a sudden my mother never drank a drop. She started slurring her words a little bit. She'd been adding a little bit to her tea. And she'd get a little wobbly, you know, and if you, and then the kicker was they say, Mom, come here, you know, or walk up to her and you'd smell her breath and it smelled like alcohol. Oh my gosh. So as their body is going through this whole sugar thing, it produces a really stinky breath that smells like alcohol. So you can really make a big mistake if you accuse someone of that. Now, you need to pull people off the floor. Obviously, if you think there's a safety issue, I mean, that's a given, or violence, you know, because, you know, they are drunk or whatever, but we can do that. But you take them quietly. You don't make accusations in front of anybody in public. You take them off the floor to HR and you deal with it that way in private. And if you do have to have them removed, then you do have to have them removed. But make sure you have your documentation. Now, workplace violence, you know, it's zero tolerance. And a lot of times these things happen when people are under the influence and or stress. Oh, well, I won't pick it up. That would just be rude. I don't usually get anybody calling me on the telephone. So, and oh my gosh, yeah, 600 deaths on the job every year from murder. That's craziness. Page 327 in our book. Murder, from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, murder causes 600 deaths on the job every year. That's just, it breaks me, just breaks my heart. No one is supposed to ever go to work and come home in worse shape than when they left their house in the morning. It's just not supposed to happen. So we have the physical violence, but we also have mental violence, and you're going to see more and more of this. Wisconsin is one of the leading states in this. There's very few states in our country that have dealt with formally dealt with laws on the books for bullying. We have the Healthy Workplace Act here. It used to be, or they're transitioning to it. It used to be called mental abuse, and it deals with bullying, which is mental violence. Okay. Then it gets into, you know, the theft of money, goods, time, information, all that stuff. My gosh, I was in retailing for years, and I have an undergraduate degree in merchandising. 45%, look at the bottom of page 328, of employee theft. I mean, that's actually fairly low because it should be higher than that. I don't know how old that's. Oh, well, December. That one's from National Retail Security Surveillance Executive Summary, page 2011. So they've got, but 31% shoplifting, 24% other. But over half of your expenses or your theft is coming from your employees. Now remember, it doesn't mean they're actually taking stuff. It used to be pens and pencils, by the way, used to be the #1 thing, and then sticky notes. Yeah, sticky notes. But now a lot of it's time, because guess what we have? We have the internet. Right. What about Cyber Monday? Ooh, boy, lots of people surfing the web. What did they have here? They had one recent survey found that over 3/4 of employees with Facebook accounts visited the site during their work day. And another survey found that 40% of web surfing during work hours is for personal reasons. I wonder how high it is on Cyber Monday. It's off the charts, obviously, because they're all at work on Monday and they're all shopping. So now it might be time that you're stealing. Page 330 starts that counseling, and I actually gave you that handout for you to read, which summarizes most of this, a nice little tool for the toolbox kind of thing. Discipline, administering discipline, you know, sadly, you're going to be involved in this a lot, even if it's minor things or not always big things. But employees do have rights. And again, this kind of borderlines into the labor law side of things. So before you administer discipline or you think about discipline or punishment, go back to the beginning. Go back to that little card you made, right? You're going to make that little card that has those 6 key questions on it from page 324, right? Yes, because you're pulling it out right now as we speak, because you've already done it, right? Yeah. Yeah. But make sure you revisit those questions. Those kinds of things provide you with documentation, because they have the right. If you look on the bottom of page 333, the right to know the job expectations and consequences for not fulfilling those expectations, the right to receive consistent and predictable management action in response to violation of the rules. You can read the rest of these. These are employee rights by law. This isn't a theory. They have the right to these things. If you don't discipline them or use a model or some sort of disciplinary, action model or something, you're going to be in violation of that because they have not been aware of their rights, been made aware of their rights. They give us this little 4-step model here on the bottom of page 334 into 335, but that's fine. Gives you a really good idea of how to set one up. But most of you probably work for a company that already has one. They have, if this happens, we do this, and then it's this, and then it's this, and then it's this. So you would follow whatever the disciplinary model that your company uses. That's what you would use, and that's what you would train with your employees. Then it gets into how to, the tips from the firing line. Make sure you read that, page 336. Criticizing constructively. Don't describe the behavior, not the person. Be specific and accurate. Listen, you're a supervisor now. You don't get to speak in generalities anymore. You don't get to say things like, you know what, you're always late. You better say, you know what, you were late twice last week, on Thursday the 13th and then on Friday the 27th. You need your documentation, okay? Take my legal issues class. Oh, it's a fun class. And we kind of get into, okay, this is what you do and this is what you can't do, okay? But the whole idea behind, constructive confrontation, constructive feedback, criticizing constructive, I don't care what, words you put on it, is to try to end the problem behavior. You're trying to promote positive behavior. You're trying to follow those 6 rules, follow the law. You're trying to make sure that you solve problems so they don't come back to haunt you, okay? And then, of course, avoid dismissal because turnover costs us money, all right? And then they give you documentation for disciplinary action. They get into that again. Positive discipline, self-discipline, troubled employees. That conversation, we've kind of talked on and off a little bit about some of that stuff. The detection of troubled employees. Again, be very, very careful. Especially when, even things like when we get into like domestic violence and stuff, you can't judge. And you can't tell people what to do. So if you have a troubled employee and you finally do sit down and ask them, okay, what's going on? And they tell you, well, my spouse is slapping me around. I mean, you can't get on your high horse and step into this and all of a sudden become the counselor. You need to, not that we don't care, but you need to direct them to the people that can help them professionally. And that's where they give you this, step by step there, and how do we confront troubled employees? And that's where that handout, I'll throw it in, or week 12 or week 13 or wherever it's going to end up here. Probably in our week 12 to go along with this chapter, the, how to handle or how to calm an angry employee. And then sources of support. If you're a bigger company, you're going to have EAP programs. If you're a smaller company, you may not. If you're a small owner operator, you're definitely not. And then your sources of support become much smaller, I should say much more limited. So this chapter, pretty short overview about some pretty important stuff. So I would really highly advise you, if you're promoted into supervisor's position, that you take a legal issues class of some sort or legal issues for supervisor. It's not a bunch of legalese and things like that, so that you can really administer these things properly for everybody. So there we go, chapter 12 overview. See you next time.